She's come up from Texas into snow. She's a doctoral candidate at Southern Methodist University. Her field is religious studies. She's an ordained minister of the United Church of Christ and has done a lot of work in a number of areas that we're concerned about here at Brooks. And that's enough introduction for anybody. Julie, it's all yours.
Thank you. It is good to be here with all of you. In my master's program, there was a class we couldn't take until the last semester of our last year. Sometimes even then we couldn't take it because it filled that quickly. I knew nothing about our class, only that in a very diverse program, this particular course seemed to draw almost everyone. I enrolled out of curiosity. This class, it turns out, was about a man named Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was a black minister, educator, and philosopher who worked toward racial reconciliation during the Civil Rights era. He was also the first black school minister at Boston University. When I saw the title of his autobiography, I was hooked. The title of that book is With Head and Heart. I had always felt like my intellect often blocked spirituality for me. I just had too many questions. So a faith leader and social justice advocate inviting my thoughts with endless questions, concerns, and uncertainties, and my feelings with all their complexity and intensity together within a spiritual journey sounded appealing to me. Thurman said our heads and our hearts are interrelated. They speak truths to each other in ways that reveal what is real about life, relationships, and meaning. For me, this meant I could be more real. My faith can include unresolved questions and issues, changing ideas, and struggles to know how best to live in this world. Knowledge of all kinds, whether scientific, philosophical, historical, technological, even theological, isn't threatening because it seeks deeper understandings of the fullness of existence. Feelings aren't irrational. Rather, they can make ideas and experiences come to life. These freedoms to think, feel, search, and even just rest, knowing that the questions are always going to be there. This is powerful. It makes faith seem like an unfolding, life-giving adventure, rather than a task or obligation that I have to get just right. And Howard Thurman had even more to teach me. He saw life as a vast, interdependent web of relationships. Spirituality within that web was a great mystery. He believed God is a singular, eternal truth, while recognizing that, in his words, God's nature is too huge, God's movement too deep, ever to be comprehended by a single conception or point of view. I had been troubled for a long time about my identity as a Christian. I believe strongly in love, compassion, and justice, and understand Christian beliefs as supporting these ideals. But in embracing this particular faith path, I didn't want to dismiss other faiths. Nor did I want to be associated with some of the judgmental, hurtful ways I have seen Christians and Christianity operating. Thurman's ideas about not limiting a spiritual reality too large to ever fully comprehend were freeing. Imagine a semi-permeable or porous shape. I have a basic structure with my personality, ideas, and commitments, and I'm open to new understandings that challenge me, help me grow, bring new ways to thrive and connect with things beyond myself. Since that time, I have worked alongside persons in other faith traditions, in other Christian denominations, and with persons who don't identify with any tradition. I taught middle school Sunday school with a Jewish woman. I joined diverse faith leaders and secular groups in Atlanta to help pass a living wage ordinance. In Colorado, our youth raised $14,000 one January night by sleeping outdoors with youth from other churches and synagogues. Together, we created an interfaith vigil, raising awareness about people experiencing homelessness. And at a retreat center in Wyoming, we celebrate all kinds of spirituality. In a wilderness area where petroglyphs, created hundreds of years ago by Arapaho shamans, make the area sacred for many different people. Each experience has inspired and enriched me and made me feel a part of a bigger, deeper oneness that holds diversity within it. This openness, inclusivity, and acceptance are clear in this is one more idea of Thurman's I want to share. But this is the idea that I think of almost daily. Thurman talks about profound differences between having contact without relationships with people different from ourselves and having contact with relationships with people different from ourselves. Contact with others without relationships most often deepens stereotypes, divisions, and inequalities. Contact with relationships creates understanding, empathy, respect, and mutuality. Thurman knew these relationships were foundations of daily community, racial reconciliation, and justice. During my master's, I lived and worked at a homeless shelter for women and their children. Every night, different volunteer groups brought dinner. Some stayed in the kitchen, while others joined the families. There are understandable reasons for staying in the kitchen. Some are related to discomfort and uncertainties with someone who seems so different. But volunteers who chose to share meals with the resident families often had conversations where they learned something about each other's stories. Sometimes it was awkward, but there was potential for relationship with these contacts. Potential to move beyond stereotypes and assumptions and into mutual respect and understandings. Because I lived there, I was able to sit with the residents at night in the yard, just listening. We laughed and cried as they told stories about daily life, and deeper realities. They asked about my life too. I was with some of them when I got a call that my dad needed emergency open heart surgery. They hugged me and encouraged me to go be with him when I had no clue what to do. These relationships have shaped how I live. They compel me to seek out roots of homelessness, economic inequalities, and gender and racial injustices. I also saw this power of contact with relationships as I was reflecting back into my past. In college, I studied in Europe. I wondered at the majesty of cathedrals, castles, and spectacular works of art. I touched pockmarks made by World War II bombings in London and Berlin. I walked through Auschwitz, moved to my core by gas chambers and mass anonymous burial pits. These experiences made me long to connect more deeply with people whose daily realities and sufferings I could only imagine. The next summer, I interned as a hospital chaplain at a cancer hospital. I sat with patients and their families, some of them recovering, some uncertain, some actively dying. Together, we experienced fear, grief, hope, anger, laughter, and most of all, love. Often, we just sat in stillness because sometimes there are no words. After college, I went back to Europe, to Prague. This time I lived there. For 5 months, I got to build relationships. New friends invited me into their homes and took me to their favorite places. I learned about people much more complex than stereotypes. In turn, I invited them into my home, introducing them to Tex-Mex cuisine and an image of Texas beyond horses and the TV show Dallas, popular at the time. Some relationships I've maintained, and others remain real in memories and in how I respond to new people and situations. I always know there are real lives at stake in what is often discussed as issues. And let me say, I would love to hear your thoughts about how this idea relates to social media. Which interactions do you think are more contact without relationship? And which interactions do you think are more contact with relationships? And how, whether, or why that distinction might matter as social media interactions deal with everyday realities and with heated issues. Howard Thurman also knew societal changes begin closer to home, in shared cups of coffee, play, meals, conversations, an openness to people different from ourselves in our own communities. In some ways, this seems less daunting than immersion in entirely new realities. In other ways, it requires a different kind of energy and discomfort. The most difficult experiences I have had becoming more comfortable with differences have been closer to home. When one of my best friends in college came out as a lesbian, I couldn't yet fully accept her realities. When another friend began transitioning from a woman to a man, I was confused, uncomfortable. When several of my close friends said they couldn't accept my call to ministry because I was a woman, it hurt. Sometimes I have missed opportunities to stick with and develop relationships with people different from myself. But when we have dug deep in honest, uncomfortable, painful conversations and spent lots of quality time together, not focused on our differences, it has always been worth it. They've made me a better person, a better friend, and a better ally in efforts for justice and equality. I later officiated a wedding for a gay friend, and my transgender friend read scripture at my own wedding. He read from the Christian passages a passage about love. Love that is patient and kind. Love that is more important than knowledge and even faith. Love that accepts and never ends. Howard Thurman's spirituality reflects faith in something that embraces us and connects us in our particularities and our commonalities without denying either. Faith that learns something from many meaning systems and all of life's experiences. Faith that is honest about questions and uncertainties. For me, this sparks endless possibilities, sometimes sacred in exciting new adventures, and sometimes sacred in simple daily living. Whether it's my young children giggling madly during a tickle flurry, watching a movie with friends, studying together, creating art, being on a team, this is spirituality I can embrace with the fullness of my head and my heart. And because of that, I look forward to all that is yet to come. Thank you.